Awesome stuff. I think this is live now. I'm just checking on my other screens to make sure the feed's coming through, and it is, so that's good news. I'm gonna try not to watch them directly because it's delayed and it's super distracting. So yeah, this is pretty cool. This is going to be an AMA. I reached out to folks in my Discord community, tried to get a couple of questions seated. It's really tricky to schedule one of these because if you think about scheduling a meeting at work, you're usually able to kind of look at people's calendars and stuff. But when you put out something like this for the internet, it's like, what's the best time, right? So I figured I was just going to record it and I just pick a time that I could do it at. So Monday night, kind of a little bit before bed, seemed like a good fit for me at least. I figured I try to keep this to about an hour in length, so it's 9:30 p.m. here in Seattle area, and wrap it up at 10:30. And yeah, so I have questions that I've written down from the Discord community. I have a couple of extras just to kind of seed conversation. Some some types of questions that come up. I do talks like this at Microsoft, not regularly, but I mentor early in career folks. So that has a grouping of questions about career progression and stuff like that that comes up pretty regularly. I've done a couple of AMAs at Microsoft, even with like a significantly more senior people as me, or significantly more senior people than me, and those have been really cool too. Just because people ask questions and you kind of get to hear from me and then from people that have been in industry even longer than me. So yeah, I'm gonna try to monitor the chat. I think it looks like it's sending to the video feed, so that's good. And I thought this was kind of cool because totally coincidentally, I had tried doing a couple of live streams last year, and they were more centered around like how to write code. So I was walking people through building some really simple applications, and I think it was almost like exactly a year ago that I did my last live stream. So I do want to try doing more of these. This one, like I said, will be focused more just around general software engineering. A bunch of the questions that I have are kind of career focused. So probably not like, programming centric, but of course, if people have questions like that, then if there's time and whatever, then I'm happy to kind of touch on that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a few minutes into this, so I might as well kick it off. And as I'm going through this, feel free to ask questions in the chat. And like I said, I'll try to monitor, and then that way I can answer you on the fly here. So okay, starting with some questions from Discord. The first is around like what is a software architect? So there's a follow-up question to this, and I'll try to kind of touch on both of them. But it's like as a programmer, is being a software architect something that you should plan to aspire to? Okay, so starting off with what a software architect is, with any type of role, really, the definition of it is going to vary from company to company, organization to organization. I can tell you that from working at a startup before Microsoft, we had software architect roles. I think conceptually they probably aim to be a similar thing, but in practice they just weren't, which is fine because I think fundamentally, when it comes to any role, like you being in the role, you want to make sure that you're aligned with your manager, doing what's expected of you. So, in general, I would say that a software architect position, and I'm going to kind of give you a few different flavors of this, but generally, someone in that position is doing more like high level system design. They are thinking through sort of the direction that you might have products and platforms heading in technically. So, for example, if you had a large company that had a lot of products and services, you might have architects in these various areas that are trying to make sure that as we are progressing on these different products and services, that people aren't, reinventing the same thing across teams and silos. Over time, that kind of thing can happen, of course, and maybe they start to identify these pockets of, hey, like these couple of systems maybe should be the same thing, and they will schedule work to be able to make sure that teams can get that kind of thing addressed over time. So trying to get alignment in tech direction is a big thing. They could be looking even further ahead than what people just actively have in place and trying to make sure that, hey, like in the next few years, like we should be thinking about heading in this direction, adopting these technologies, that kind of thing. I would also mention that the role of a software architect, this is the crappy thing about live streams. I can't edit it, so I can't fumble my words and just have to kind of roll with them, I guess. But yeah, software architects are generally participating a lot more in like design reviews and stuff like that. So they might have their own design docs and stuff they're putting together at high levels. And then across the different teams with other software engineers, there might be design docs being proposed. You pull in architects and stuff to be able to make sure that that's in line with the direction that they're trying to head in and that kind of thing. I would say, and this is where it starts to really vary from org to org and company to company, but generally, software architects are spending less time writing lines of code. That's not to say that they don't write code, but I would say that even at smaller companies, they probably start to take their hands off a little bit more. But at small companies, like I was managing teams at a small company for 8 years and coding like every day too. So it's a lot more common at small companies that everyone is trying to help progress in whatever way they can with the product and service. So at big companies, though, because you're interfacing with more teams and things like that, the likelihood that you have dedicated time as a software architect just to sit there and start contributing code, it's just reduced. So, not that it doesn't happen, it's just that it's reduced. The next part, so hopefully that clarifies things. Like I said, it's not written in stone, but generally it's a kind of more high level thinking about the direction of the technology. So, as a programmer, should we aspire to be software architects? This is interesting. I think that, like, what I would say traditionally people hear, and maybe this is, changing, which would be good, but I think traditionally what people hear is that, like, the path forward at some point is management. And I completely disagree with that because I think it's a very different skill set. Being a software architect is a lot more in line with being a software developer and that kind of progression. So, is it a good fit? Um, Perhaps. But I think if you keep in mind the types of things that I was mentioning, like you're a lot more focused on high level design, forward direction of technology, keeping alignment across teams and parts of the organization with that technology direction. If that interests you, like high level system design and that kind of thing, then perhaps it's a really good fit. I think that if you're someone that really appreciates just, getting dedicated time to, create software and, code solutions for challenging problems, that might start to feel not as rewarding. The other challenging thing with answering this is that the different sort of career structures and career progressions that you'd have at different companies will look different, right? So I think the company I was at before Microsoft, before I left, it would have been like engineer, senior engineer, and then like architect would have been the progression of that. So, like, if you wanted to keep progressing in your individual contributor role as a software engineer, it kind of made it such that you would be heading in that direction. Whether or not that's the case now, different story, but that's one example that could exist out there, right? Now, in other cases, it might be that that's just like a divergent path on the career ladder, so to speak. So, if you wanted to maintain being able to contribute, individually writing code, spend not spending as much time, like say in meetings and coordinating between different teams, and perhaps there's dedicated roles for that. So I just think it's about what your interests are coupled with what's available. So if you're interested in staying at a company that maybe forces you in that direction, like that might be what you're looking at. Not necessarily something that I'd you know try to stick to or not explore other options. Just checking the chat here. Oh, it looks like this is definitely spam, so that's very cool. No, I'm not interested. Okay, so hopefully that kind of helps with programmer aspiring to architect. I might as well touch on the manager part because I think it's kind of related to this type of question. I know the question was about programmers to architects, but manager comes up a lot, I think, too. And what I would kind of caution with this is it's a similar thing, but more exaggerated in terms of focus areas and skill set. So I would say that for folks that are like, hey, I'm gonna keep, progressing in my career. I'm a junior engineer, I'm gonna become senior, and then at some point I'm going to be a manager because that is the stepping stone. I want to caution you that they're just different roles. And sometimes it's not obvious until people are doing that transition. I actually started dev leader. It's 2024. I started dev leader in 2013, so a long time ago, 11 years ago. And I started it because I was in this position where I had taken on management, and being a manager and working as a software engineer at the same time, I figured I need to do a lot of learning. I'm going to start blogging about, my experiences doing this. Not to say I'm an authority on it, because absolutely not. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just starting, but I wanted to create Dev Leader originally for that. So I kind of touching back on that original point though, the challenge is that you're experiencing so many different things that aren't just writing code when you're managing teams. And you'll probably hear me say a lot that I think that the biggest challenges in software engineering are not technical problems. Like, engineers are very good at solving technical problems. I think the biggest challenges in software engineering are working with people. um, Sometimes as software engineers, we might not be exposed to all of these different types of things, but it's maybe the case you're not paying attention to them as well, because there's a lot of interpersonal conflict that comes up, a lot of conversations that I'll have one-on-one with people about how they can do better communicating, that kind of thing. So I spend a lot of time focused on people, right? In my current role at Microsoft, I do not write code. I was writing code a ton at the previous company. Um, and just checking the chat. Yeah, I'll touch on that question. That's a good one. So thanks, William. The company that I was at before, I was coding alongside all of my management, expectations. But the current role I have is just managing people. In startup world for me, I worked, and this is no one's fault except my own. Like, I love to do it, but I was working nonstop. So if you're managing teams of people, truly, if you have more than like 5 people, you really don't have time to be doing other things. Like, if you're still contributing to the code base, my opinion, not a rule here, but my opinion is probably that you are either not investing enough time with your people on your team, or you are maybe doing, pardon my language, like half-assed code, or you're making time, like you're taking extra time for your work. So I think that to balance things properly, once your teams start to grow in size, you really just don't have time to be coding as a manager. It's not to say that it cannot be done, but I think you start making trades. So for folks that are like, this is my career path, like, yeah, it was mine. Actually, it was kind of almost like accidental from being in a startup. Like, hey, you can talk to people, the code. Like, do you want to manage the engineers coming on? And I stuck with it. But the skill sets are certainly a lot more, on the human skills. So definitely something you have to think of. And I would say too that in terms of like project management, product management, that kind of thing, you end up layering in a lot of that. There's a level of, architecture expectations in an engineering manager role. All these different things get layered in. And again, when you start doing that and making sure you're focused on the engineering teams, like, there's just not time to code. It's the reality of things. Okay, so that's kind of just me building off that architect question. Um, the next part, this is actually a multi-part question. So how much and what kind of influence does a senior engineer have versus an architect? I kind of touched on this a little bit, but so I won't spend too much time on answering this specifically, but I do think that as a senior software engineer, obviously you're going to have input on, the especially in the area that you're working in, like the architectural direction and things like that. So I would argue, like, kind of the architect's role is at a macro level, the direction of the architecture. And within a team or a smaller group and stuff, like senior software engineers and things like that, you might be putting design docs together, having your team sign off on them, other teams that are going to be interfacing, and perhaps even architects, right? Like I said, coming into that. So you do get that kind of influence as a senior software engineer. It's just not as broad. And I would say usually you're probably having like architects kind of sign off on saying like, yeah, that makes sense. They might not know the specifics of the domain you're working in as well as you, right? So you would be the subject matter expert, but they're looking at your solution or your proposed solution going, that seems to check out. Like, I trust that you know what you're working on, but that seems to check out with the rest of the direction that we're heading in. So it would be more, I guess, like wider area for a software architect versus a senior software engineer. And these are generalizations, right? It's really hard to answer this as like a blanket statement because anyone listening to this might go, well, that's not the case where I work. And probably, right? There's going to be exceptions and deviations from this, but just trying to give you a generalization. This is a great question. How do I get an offer at Microsoft? We want to hear the secrets. Uh, I actually, I guess it's probably not that surprising being on social media and stuff. I get people asking me all the time, like, hey, like, can I get a referral? Hey, like, how do I get a job? Um, the reality is, like, and you can, if you are someone that's asked me, you can, reply to this, but I tell people you get a job at Microsoft the same way that everyone else does. You go to the careers page and then you look for the job and you apply for it. The reality is, yes, there is like referrals and things like that, but I would never, Microsoft aside, I would never refer people that I haven't worked with. And that's not because I don't want you to be able to get a job or something like that. I don't do that because it puts my reputation on the line as well, right? I want to make sure that if I'm putting someone forward for a referral, that I can stand behind that. It just would be wrong. It's like against my morals to do that. But ultimately, even if I wanted to refer someone, they still have to apply on the careers page. So there's no secret. You apply on the careers page. But if this question was more about like how does it look to try applying and getting a job and interviewing and stuff like that, it is like a big tech company, right? So a lot of the stereotypical big tech interview things apply here. So depending on, it's going to change from role and level and stuff like that, but generally speaking, several rounds of interviews, and this is to get different perspectives from different people, also at different levels, and they focus on different things. So you might get coding questions in all of them. You might get coding questions and system design questions mixed in. So these types of things will come up, and the interviewers are also looking there for certain characteristics and things that when they get back together after they can talk and kind of evaluate, make sure that people got to hear a fully rounded perspective on the candidates. Definitely, I'm not a big fan of doing like lead code problems and grinding like system design interview questions. I think that if you're looking to apply at Microsoft or other big tech companies, it's a pretty typical thing. So the way that I talk about approaching these types of things, I made a few videos and written articles on this as well, but if you are trying to apply to Microsoft or other big tech, I think about these in different phases because one of the first steps is making sure that like your resume gets noticed, right? Because what good is the interviewing skills if you can't get noticed with your resume? So putting in effort to craft a good resume, make sure you have visibility, apply to the right job roles, things like that. That's a whole set of skills and amount of effort you have to put in. Next step is okay, cool, you start getting the interviews and things like that. I would say that especially for big tech companies, Microsoft included, having practice with things like lead code is very good. And I say that because you're going to be put on the spot to do a programming question. You're going to want to be able to talk through it. There's probably algorithms and data structures involved. And I don't like about lead code problems and similar interview questions where people just try to trick you. Like, oh, you know the optimization and you do it in one line kind of thing. Like, that's kind of silly, defeats the whole point. So I would focus on making sure you can walk through that with your interviewer. Like, here's how I'm thinking about stepping through this, how I'm approaching the algorithm, making sure you're asking clarifying questions, right? You don't want to make assumptions. You want to ask them, get it clarified, move forward. And the same thing with your system design questions that you might get. They're purposefully left vague, right? If you do some research and homework on this, you will find this is part of the strategy. You get, I need you to build a system that processes payments for movies. Okay. And if you just start building it, it's like, did you ask the right questions about what you're building, right? So part of that is making sure you can say like, well, how many users do we are we thinking about supporting concurrently? Are we prioritizing like latency? Like, are we thinking about movies being released and we have to make sure we can handle burst traffic, like all this kind of what payment gateways, like there's a million questions you could ask, but you want to start asking some questions to narrow in the direction you're going in. And as you're building it, keep asking questions and getting the direction. So the other part beyond that will be more like, I guess you call them like soft skills, like talking about experiences and things like that. This can look a bunch of different ways, but I would honestly just say like practice going through different parts of your career, your resume, things like that. Just take some notes. Like you just want to be comfortable being able to draw from different experiences that you've had, right? Think about challenging conversations you've had at work, projects that failed, projects that were awesome, just these different scenarios. And again, like you're allowed to pause and kind of reflect in the interview. Nothing wrong with that, but you don't want to be scrambling and going, I've never had a project not be perfect. Like, really? It's software, so like you probably have. But yeah, like I would say there's no secrets, but you have to be able to practice going through those interviews. And I should, to round that whole question out, the third part is a lot of those skills for the system design. Well, system design is still good, but a lot of the coding practice problems, I really personally don't feel like translate into stuff that I do day to day. Let me back up. Engineering manager slightly different. They don't really translate into work that I see software engineers doing day to day, including when I was writing code personally. So I think that it's an important skill. It's just not as important when you're on the job. It's good for interviewing. How do I build my network to aid in job searches? I think this is a great question, and I'm glad that more people are thinking about this. Um, Something I'm just going to kind of give you one example that I've seen working really well for people, but I would say like getting online and sharing your learning, I think is an awesome way to connect with people, to get visibility. But what I would caution against is you don't want to be learning something and try to pretend that you're an expert. People can see right through it. It's really, can I say the word cringe? Like, I don't know if I'm too old to say that. It's cringy, it's obvious, but what's really cool is just being like, hey, like I'm learning this thing and here's what I'm learning. So you get a bunch of different benefits from this. One is that when you talk about what you're learning, I was talking about this on social media literally today, but when you talk about what you're learning, you find different ways to convey what you think you understand to different audiences. You find out very quickly if you know what you're talking about. Because if you're like, I don't even know how I would explain this to someone, like maybe you don't know it as well as you thought. It's a really good like gut check. Next part, if you're open and transparent about, hey, I'm learning this, here's like kind of the summary of what I think I've gathered from that, you will have other people, if you start to do this frequently, other people chiming in and being like, yep, that's right, or nope, not quite. Of course, online you're going to get all sorts of things in between with mean people and whatever else, but keep moving along. It's the internet. But you start to get these connections of people that go, oh yeah, like Nick posts about this kind of stuff. Like, oh, interesting. Like, oh, he's learning about this. Like, I know about that actually. Let me see if I have something to add in. I think that's really good. And the process of doing this, you start to build up a bit of a, I don't want to say like a on necessarily an online presence or like creator influencer type of thing. That's a bit more just active and a bit more extreme, but doing that can help you network with people. You could consider blogging about the stuff you're learning, putting stuff on GitHub. Uh, I don't personally like. I don't think you have to have projects and stuff on GitHub. I think anything's helpful, right? Anything you can do is helpful, but requirement, I just don't think. any company that's saying you must have stuff on GitHub to be like hired, like probably don't want to work there. Personal opinion, but I'll say it. But yeah, on that note, build projects. I think it's a great way to learn. You can start talking about what you're building and that kind of stuff. It all feeds together. But that's how I would suggest networking, especially if you're online posting content. You see other people, like, I work at Microsoft. Cool. Like, connect with me. Then build your network. You'll see, oh, this other person works at Microsoft in this space. Let me follow them and see what they're up to. Oh, they're using this technology. I wonder if I should go, play around with that and see what that's all about. Um, like, it's a network, right? Just start connecting with people, start interacting. I think there's a lot of opportunities. Um, what else? Okay, so that's networking. This was an interesting question. Do you believe, and then there's a quote, and the quote might not be exact here, but one becomes a good programmer when their old code needs to be modified to support new needs instead of just moving on to new projects. So I think the quote here is trying to say, like, instead of just building something and going, cool, park it, on to the next thing and keep going along, that you have built something that is lasting. I think this is kind of what it's after. Building something that's lasting, and then you're going, oh, like, we have the next wave of like enhancements that need to go into this. Obviously, depending on what you're building, this could look very different. But the follow-up question to this was about refactoring. So I don't know if I would like, this quote seems very specific. I think there's a lot of things that make good programmers. So maybe I'll start by saying I don't, you know, specifically agree with this. Is it a part of it or a way to look at it? Sure, but I don't think that is what makes a good programmer. I think a good programmer, I mean, should have thought about this before I opened my mouth, I guess, but I think a good programmer is obviously able to write good code that can be tested, that can be read easily, that can be extended easily. So if you're like, to the point of this question, if you're coming back to it, wanting to add more things, um, that you can enhance it without just having to go, oh, like, guess we painted ourselves into a corner here and we have to do something else. So being able to enhance things, test them, readable, for the most part. That's on the technical side, but I always say, like, good programmers, like, your work as software engineers, right? You're working in teams. Like, there's so much focus on the technical skills that I think everyone just completely forgets the soft skills, the people skills. I see it all the time. Like, all of the time for over a decade, right? People hyper focus on technical stuff. You will be working in teams, almost, I can almost guarantee it. And if you're not thinking about how do I collaborate well, how do I communicate well, if you don't practice these things, like, you'll get into the workforce and you might feel like, oh crap, maybe I'm not so good at communicating things clearly. Maybe I have challenges collaborating with people in different scenarios, right? Like, those are things you want to work on. So I think all of those factor into what a good programmer is. But the next part of this question, like, focusing on refactoring. Um, I think refactoring is like one of the most important things that you can be doing, like, have as a skill set as a software developer. The reason I say that is because, and I'm trying to digest this quote a little bit more because I don't know the context of the quote. But the reason I think refactoring is so important is because if you're just throwing away the things you build, rewriting them, like, there is so much waste that comes with that. And I think that anyone who is just kind of like always jumping to a rewrite, I don't think that you're learning some important lessons. And maybe that's a loaded thing to say. Um, but I don't think there's lessons I think that you're not learning and practicing by not refactoring. So what I mean by that is you build something, it gets to a point and you go, we can't continue to enhance this because, I don't know, like, the code's not set up properly. You go, okay, well, I guess we start from scratch. And this time we'll do it the right way. Okay? Then what do you think happens? You go build it again. It's not is good for a long time because it's missing features. But you started writing the code in a really nice way, and after longer than you thought, it gets to a point where you go, cool, we did it. This is awesome. And you wait a little bit longer and you go, man, we can't add features to this anymore. We painted ourselves into a corner again. We have to rewrite this. And you do it all over again. So it's not that rewriting is the end of the world or you should never do it, but I think when you don't practice refactoring things, you don't understand the different, you don't understand as well the different patterns, practices, designs, and stuff that you want to put in place to say, this thing that I'm putting in place here will allow us to extend this easier. And you have to be careful because if you do this to an extreme, you almost get nothing done because you go, I can extend this infinitely. I actually personally fall into this camp a lot with my personal projects just because it's the style of programming and design that I like to do. So in professional projects, I have to be very careful about, do we really need to think about extending this in this direction? Like, could we come back to this later, pay a little bit of extra, debt down to do this? But the reason I focus on refactoring so much is that I think you need to be able to have that skill set to continue having software evolve. Yeah, I think that's how I would wrap that one up. I want to jump to William's question in the chat, and sorry, I wanted to get through my Discord member questions that came in. So William's question says, "Do you think AI will take many dev test jobs, even if it's also created some jobs?" Yeah, I think the way that I would think about this is like, I see, and like the hard thing is like, who knows, right? Because maybe someone will watch this video in 10 years and go, what an idiot. How could he think that? I'm trying to be careful about my future self going, oh man, like you shouldn't have said that. But my personal opinion here is that, at least currently, right, AI that we're dealing with is large language models. I think it's doing some incredible stuff. Totally. Very impressive. So I'm not trying to discredit it. I think what we will see over the next few years is that there are things that we do in testing roles, software engineering roles, right, that are things that can be repeated easily, right? I just think about like automation, and there's stuff like, as unfortunately, as programmers, we go, hey, I'm a programmer, I can automate that, right? And then the 2-second task that it takes you ends up being, a week to automate. But we do that kind of thing because we're trying to save ourselves time. And I think AI over the next little while, especially, is going to start really chewing away at some of that stuff. So I don't think in the short term it's just going to, obsolete software engineers, testers, that kind of stuff. I would say, on the testing side, like, I have worked with dedicated testing roles before, and depending who's watching this, I want to be careful about the language I use because I don't want to misrepresent what I'm trying to convey. If you are doing manual testing roles that only involve clicking through a script, like next press this button, next enter this text, okay, test case passes. Like if it's strictly just repeating things, I think that your role is already obsolete, and it was obsolete before AI. That's not to say that there is no value in testing. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's, in my opinion, very little value in having a human being do things that are extremely repeatable. So, if you were a tester and all that you were doing was having a script put in front of you to click things, I would say, in my opinion, your time is much better spent learning how you could go automate this. Then you can go focus on doing other things. And I wanted to say this part because when I say go focus on doing other things, I think that if you're the type of person that's extremely complacent in what you're doing, you will probably be the part of the first group that finds themselves going, wow, like AI is doing my job. And it's because as AI is able to do more things more effectively, you are not putting yourself in a position where you're going, cool, AI is able to do that. I'm going to take on a different challenge and continue to build up my skill set, focus on these other things that need attention, right? Like you take your time back to go focus on the next biggest high priority thing that you can do a good job of. So I think it's a bit of a mindset thing. I use testing as an example here. I'll just make up another one off the top of my head. If you were a programmer that spent most of your time, hopefully this isn't most people, but if you spend most of your time just doing code reviews, right? Maybe maybe AI gets to a point where, we have linting in place already. We have compile time stuff, static analysis, like add in AI to do some extra analysis on top of that. Maybe AI in the short term helps close the gap in a lot of like pull requests and code reviews. I think there's other value in that. Like you can learn about what people are doing, but if you just want someone to sign off on like, is this good? If you were spending all of your time doing that, I think you'll probably be obsolete pretty fast. But again, like I think you should be focusing on what's the next big challenge as a software engineer, as a tester that I could be going to do. Um, and then on the last part of this, right? Like even as it's creating some jobs, like yeah, like there's a lot like there's just a lot of stuff that's coming up right now. You could be someone building tools that like have an AI layer to them, right? To help out with things. I think AI is like super good, or obviously it's great at a lot of things, but a really good use case that I like is like creativity, right? Hey, I need to refactor this code and like I know that there's a problem that I'm trying to address. Ask a large language model like here's the problem, here's the code. Like maybe you're not familiar with a bunch of different refactoring techniques or design patterns, architecture styles. You could ask it and it could do it and explain it for you, right? It might not be perfect, but like that creative process of like, oh, I didn't think about, if I restructure these objects this way, like, yeah, like that could be a huge help. So I see a lot of opportunity. And I think personally, because I see a lot of opportunity, I don't see it so much as like a scary risk because I'm seeing it as replacing some of the boring, mundane things. So that's my stance on it. If we wait a little bit longer and I start going, oh, like maybe it obsoletes engineering managers, right? Because if we don't have software engineers, like I don't know who I'm going to be managing, right? So we'll see. I think it's going to be a really interesting time, but personally, I'm not scared about it because I'm seeing it as opportunities. So thanks, William. I hope that answer kind of makes sense. But yeah, that's my stance right now. Cool. I'm gonna scroll through some other questions unless other folks have them in the chat. Um, what skills? Oh, mistakes. Yeah, I can talk about mistakes in my career. Um, I'm gonna talk about some like engineering management mistakes first because they're very relevant to me. But I think for you folks, I'm gonna as I'm talking, I'm gonna try to see if I can think back to some stuff that maybe I messed up as a software engineer, um, and try to share some stuff on that. But yeah, early on, as an engineering manager that was balancing teams, and writing code, I think something that I messed up on early was this misconception of how much time needed to go into managing teams. So that's one part. So for me early on, what I used to do, I think early on I was managing like up to 13 people at one point. I think that's the most I've ever managed at one point in time. So up to 13 people or so plus coding. And what that meant was that I would go a couple of weeks where I would only be coding and almost like not ignoring the team, but really not doing like a good job managing. And then I would go, oh man, like this is bad. Like you got to focus on the team. And then I would focus on the team for like 2 weeks straight, catching up and then not code and stuff. And I had this big pendulum shift back and forth. And then I really had to think about like, how do you manage your time better so that you're doing these things evenly? Now, the reality was I was just working a ton, so I ended up just kind of fitting it all in. But over time, what happened when, like, especially now, right? Like, I'm not writing code. That's one of the biggest advantages right now is that I have more time to be with the team. Another quick one I'll share. I've been very fortunate as a software engineering manager that I've had like really awesome people to work with. And I think a mistake that I made early on was assuming that people that are just like really good at software engineering, right? They're super high performers, like great people skills, like great software developers, like just thinking, oh well, they're doing good, so like pat them on the back and say great job. But what I didn't realize was like it's really just like a super lazy, terrible way to manage people. And I thought that managing was going to be primarily just focus on people that were having challenges and trying to, help skill them up, help them navigate that stuff. But I did not pay enough attention to, more um like high performers that really needed a bit of push in their career direction. I wanted to keep them engaged. I think I just got really lucky, to be honest. And by the time I learned that, I started to like it made managing harder because instead of just saying, "Hey, you're doing a good job," I wanted to go back to these people and say, "You're doing a great job," because they are. And here are the areas that I think you can focus in to do even better, right? Sometimes it's really hard for constructive criticism when someone's doing well to pick apart and find bad things because they might not have like huge flaws or something, but you can change the framing a little bit to say things like, you do these things amazing. And I think these other areas, like compared to the amazing things you're doing, these are good opportunities to level up as well. So just investing more time into that. I'm just going to read this question from the chat. Can you please share how you started your journey on becoming principal software engineering manager? And is it your goal to become a manager or depends on the current situation? Yeah, so I'll share like my story, right? Um, I like it was coincidence, I think. I became a software engineering manager like a few months into my first role outside of university. So to back up a little bit, in university, it was a 5-year program, but I had 6 internships. I basically did not have breaks. So it was like school, internship, school, internship. It changed a tiny bit at the end, but I had 6 internships. So I had 2 years of working experience, like at real companies before graduating. And then my first job outside of university was at a startup. And this was a digital forensics company and was there as a software engineer for a little bit. And as a startup, they're like, well, we're growing and kind of said, we don't have managers. Like, do you want, like, are you interested in trying this? I'm like, sure. Because we had an awesome HR person and I owe a lot to her in my career development. But one of the things she said, she encouraged me. She's like, you you can be the judge, but she's like, you do a great job talking with people, understanding them, like navigating things. Like I think you could do this well. And it's not something that I had even considered because I had just graduated. And I'm like, I'm writing code. Programming's cool. I love it. You want me to manage people? I don't even know what that means, but sure, like the company needs it. I'm happy to try it. And then kind of stuck with it. So over those 8 years, multiple times a year, she would meet with me and she would say, what do you think? Do you think it's time that you go, back to just being a developer? Or do you think it's time that you go full into management? She said, I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just trying to gauge where you're at. And by the end, before I left that company, I was like, yeah, management. I had finally started to realize that my own impact as a software developer was not as great as being able to help those around me. And I'm a little bit biased, right? Because I was early on at that company. I had built a lot of their, initial products and stuff. It ran like a lot of prototyping. So I always felt like if I'm coding, I'm helping create these awesome new things. But by the end of it, I felt like I was running around just helping people. And I started to realize yeah, this is for me, like the management part. So that's kind of like what happened for me. But then from there, like going to Microsoft, I was hired in at a principal level. So I feel like, things might have been different if I started in big tech. I might not have had the same opportunities. So definitely owe it a lot to like startup culture and that kind of thing. So for other people, not my story now, but for other people, I do think there are absolutely other people that are in this situation where they go, hey, like I've been a technical person for a while, individual contributor, and now, their team is growing, their manager's like, I really need some help as this team's scaling up. Like, do you think you could do this? Similar to the situation I was in. And I think some people kind of just fall into it. And I've talked with people that are like, hey, I'm new to, like, I've been like a senior principal level software engineer for years, and I've just become a manager. Holy crap, this is way different than I thought. Right? So I think some people fall into it, and they start to learn about what's, expected of them and what's different, right? And then I think for other people, I've definitely coached people that had said, like, as more junior, like maybe intermediate level, right? Like, I really like being able to help mentor people, coach people on things as we're doing these projects. It's really great to work with the interns, the juniors, or even just help bring on other people to the project. Like, it's not that their like coding skills are lacking or anything like that, but they really gravitate towards these other things that like are not just coding. And I think some people identify that for themselves early, that they like that, and then I can help kind of, push them along that way in their career. So hopefully that helps answer. But my experience was definitely accidental. I don't regret it. I think it's been an awesome journey, so I'm happy with it. And I see another question here. Most memorable lessons, challenges, difficulties when you started being a manager. Yeah. Biggest. Okay. I have a lot of things kind of flashing through my head right now. Biggest challenges for sure. I've had to let people go. Um, it sucks. It's terrible. And I should back up. I've had to let people go, like not even as part of layoffs. I mean, like I've had to fire people, and it's awful. I hate it. It's part of the job, unfortunately. For individuals that I've had to do this with, I can say that I work with them, right? I work with them, tried to address gaps and things like that, communicated with them. Still, it's so hard. It's like you think about constructive criticism conversations, and it's really hard to give someone like constructive criticism. So you're doing that, really difficult. I think it's difficult for many people. And then you get to the point where you have to say it's not working, right? Like the it's so hard to do, but at the same time, I'm going to share a really cool twist on this in just a moment, but it's so hard to do. But a way that you need to try framing it is like, if it's not working for this person, you're almost doing them an injustice by forcing them to be in this spot where they're like, I can't succeed, right? You try, you work with them, you try to skill them up or address whatever challenges there are. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if it's not a good fit, like making sure that they can have opportunities elsewhere in their career, like it sucks, but I think that's a way to think about it. And the thing that I want to share that's the twist on this is I actually had someone that I had to let go. I had to terminate this person. And it was awful. Right? It's never good. It's awful. And I ran into this person years later. I don't, maybe 4, 5, 6 years later. And I remember seeing them and being like, oh no. Like, oh no, like that's someone that I had to fire. And, came up, hey, we're small talk. And they broke the ice and they said, I just wanted to let you know, like that was really hard, but I think that it was the best thing that happened to me. Right? I know that it wasn't working. I know that, we tried working on it, it wasn't working. I ended up going to this other place and I was a great fit there. And I remember hearing that and being like, okay, like it's almost like this I had this like baggage that I was carrying, or like every time you let someone go, it's like, oh man, this is terrible. But these people end up finding these awesome opportunities where it works well for them. So just try to keep that in mind. Um Most memorable lessons. Okay, I want to share something that's maybe not a lesson, but I think the most rewarding, awesome thing, because I want to spin this around a little bit and have something positive. The most rewarding, awesome thing is having people that I've managed become managers. And not because I'm trying to say like, oh, they, I don't know, like they got the position that is like they have to be a manager kind of thing, because we've already talked about different career paths and stuff. Not everyone should be a manager. I have worked with a handful of people where I manage them, and I was like, I think you will be a great manager. Just the way that they work with people, they have the technical abilities as well. And I've had two people in particular that were like, nah, like not for me. Don't like the people side of things. I'm happy to coach people, happy to help with interns, like that's fine, but I don't want to deal with people, right? Like that I draw the line at that. I don't want to deal with people. And I've watched them become managers, and they're absolutely killing it. They're doing so good at it. And it's just I don't know, it's like so rewarding to be like, I knew it and you're doing so good. So yeah, done that with a couple people. I had another guy I work with. I podcast with him. His name's Graham. We have a podcast called Dude, Where's My Code? Graham is someone that I had on my team. He was a tester, but he took on like a test strategist role. So he really worked like a software architect, but in a testing position. And he ended up going on to being an engineering manager as well. And he's incredible at it. He's actually a director of engineering at a startup. And we have a podcast where we literally meet up. We try to do it once a week, but life happens, and we meet up and we talk about like what things are you learning as an engineering manager. Like let's talk about these experiences. So for me, that's one of the most rewarding things is like seeing people kind of move to these different stages in their career. Um, I've had a couple of people leave. Uh, at least what they've told me, I think two people in my entire career have left, and that never happened before until Microsoft. Not this, it's not Microsoft's fault or anything, but I'm just kind of framing up for you. Like 8 years of my professional career managing, no one had left my team. Uh, like no one had quit, and at Microsoft, I had a couple people quit, and I think in one case it was really like, you know, really appreciate you as a manager, but like I think that I'm not doing myself a favor by exploring other companies. Early on in their career still, it's like it's hard like I'm not going to argue with that, right? I did the same thing with my internships. I had 6 of them, right? I got to explore. So I get that perspective. Probably in that situation, I'm assuming pay was probably really good, which leads me to the next person. I had someone leave and they were, I think, a junior engineer, and they took a role that was paying more than I get paid as a principal level engineering manager. It's like, yeah, like that's for that pay jump. I was like, that's a life-changing amount of pay difference. Like I'm not gonna, you know, say that that's a wrong thing to do. Like if we can't compete with that, we can't compete with that. So losing people's hard for sure. But again, I always try to think about my role as an engineering manager is making sure that I can help people do their best work that they can. The second part to that is helping them advance in their career. I would love to do that and keep the people on my team. If I can't, I would like for them to stay within our organization. If I can't, I would like them to stay within our company at least. And if I can't, I need to make sure that at the end of the day, I can say, I tried everything I could to give this person their best opportunities. And if that's not here, I need to see them succeed somewhere else. And I will be holding them back if I try to keep them here. So it's hard when people leave, but I think that's the way that I try to look at that. Um, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I hope those answers help, by the way. If you're still on here, because I can't really see who's on the live stream. If you're still here though, when you want to have any follow-ups to that, just let me know. Happy to try diving in. Um, just scrolling through some other questions here. Man, project management and large scale software development. This yeah, challenging for sure. I think the biggest part here is okay, I'll wrap up this question quick and then I'll jump to the one in the chat. Thank you, by the way, for your questions. Um, I think it's not so much like the size of the project that's the issue. I think it's the size of the organization. And I say that because I've seen big projects work really, really well. Lots of, I don't like using the word agile anymore, but like lots of, being nimble, moving fast. I've seen a lot of that happen on big projects when there's not a lot of red tape in place and people feel like they're empowered to make progress. You have, good connections with your product owners. They understand the customers really well. You have autonomy within the teams to try and make sure you can deliver things. Like when you start getting into bigger organizations, there's more processes in place because the organizations get so big. And I see that being kind of challenging. So just wanted to kind of say project management in large software projects, not really the big thing. It's really about, in my opinion, size of teams, organizational maturity. The bigger the org, the more difficult it is. Oh boy, something in my eye. Okay. Can you share your role at Microsoft and can you compare it with your past experience and how it helped you, your role at Microsoft? Yeah, okay, so I'll answer the last part of this. Difference between a principal and non-principal. Principal is just name for a level. So at Microsoft, the levels are really oddly numbered. I'm not sure where the numbering scheme comes from. Um, but like a level 59 and 60 would be like a junior, and principal starts at 65. So principal is just the title that you are given once you hit level 65 at Microsoft. So difference between principal and non-principal is the same as saying like difference between senior and principal. Honestly, scope of it. This is the same between all the roles, like or all the levels. Scope of impact, right? Your amount of impact increases. Scope of impact. The different teams and organizations that you're interfacing with that increases, right? So at principal level, you're doing cross team work, larger impact. So it just scales up as you go, but that's on the principal versus non-principal part. But my role at Microsoft compared to past experience, yeah. I mentioned this a little earlier. My past experience was coding the entire time that I was managing. And that's like I think the biggest difference, right? Biggest difference was that. The other big difference is that in my previous role, I knew, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant about this, but I was around at the company since like right near the beginning. I think I was employee number 8, and that includes like sales and marketing people. So very early in on the engineering team, and I had seen like every product that we had. We had one product before I got there, and it had a counterpart to it. I rewrote the counterpart from scratch, like me alone in the beginning. And then from there, I was prototyping a lot of the new products. So I had this sort of like, I don't know, like advantage in my management that I knew a lot of the product background. I knew a lot of the original code bases because I wrote them. And I don't think that's a requirement for managers by any means, but it's something that I could lean on, right? You could pull me into any conversation on any team and start talking about something, and I would have a lot of the context. Again, not trying to sound arrogant about it, but I'd have a lot of the context because I built a lot of a lot of the initial parts that people were talking about. So I just had I had a lot of experience across many areas. Microsoft is very different because it's enormous. I'm in the Office 365 side of things. For folks that are familiar with it, it's in an area called Substrate. Substrate is an enormous area in and of itself. Before this year, I was managing deployment teams. So we made sure we were deploying the monolithic and microservices across the entire fleet of hundreds of thousands of machines. Like, I don't know all those services, not at all. I don't know all of our deployment stack, even after working on it for 3.5 years. Like, there's so much history there, right? I don't have that luxury at Microsoft. Um, Fortunately, like I worked in C sharp a lot. We use a lot of C sharp at Microsoft, as you might imagine. Despite maybe what people are seeing in the news and stuff, it's almost all C sharp. And I can lean on the C sharp part, but I don't have the context of knowing the code bases. And again, like why does that matter? I just think that it was something that I could lean on a lot. It meant that I could talk with other engineers, other stakeholders. If people wanted to get super technical, I could say, yeah, like I can go show you the class. I can show you the line of code that's causing this problem. Microsoft, I can't do that. I have to say, I will find you the engineer who can do that. So it makes it very different. So I felt like that was like a superpower that I had before. And now at Microsoft, I just don't have that superpower. And I need to rely on my team a lot more. Future of software engineering in the next 10 years. Yeah, I think going back to that AI question, I don't think that software engineering will be replaced by AI. Do I think it will be heavily influenced by it? Yes. Do I think it will look very different in 10 years? Yes. Um, are we going to be writing as much code by hand? Like, probably not. But this just goes back to my point from earlier. I think that the actual act of writing code, like, there may be, like, we even see it now. Like, if you watch my YouTube videos, there's a lot of the time I'm coding live and I'm just pressing tab. And it's because Copilot, like, it knows the other code I've written. It knows what I want to write next. It's already happening where it's making the coding experience much, much faster. So I think a lot of that will continue to be more optimized, just feel like a better experience. And yes, I think that as, over the next few years, we'll start to see more things like, I don't know, I'm trying to think about like really boring things or like things that just feel like they're uh I don't know, like monotonous, like in software development. You have two different frameworks you have to link together, right? Like you're like, oh, I have to port some code or whatever. Like give that to the AI. Let it glue those pieces together. Let it, transcribe that code from Java to C sharp. All that Python code that exists out there, yeah, we want that on C sharp, right? So I think there's going to be tasks like that that just become so much more easy. Like I think it will feel a lot more fluid to work as a software engineer in terms of moving code and stuff around, integrating with systems. But I can see I can see a lot of software development moving more towards like a product focus. I could see it moving more towards like a system design type of thing. Um, the more the more advanced that AI gets, the more we can trust it, right? Give you an example. You might ask an LLM right now, implement an algorithm that does X and make it performant. You get the code back and you're like, okay, well, there's bugs in the code first of all, right? I think that will get better. And then you're looking at it and you're like, depending on how skilled you are, you might say, okay, that's actually not as optimized as it could be. So you ask the LLM again, hey, optimize this more. And it tries, right? Maybe it gets a little bit further, but then it adds more bugs in. So I think that type of process it will get much better at. So are you going to have to know as many of these like algorithms and data structures? Like I think the understanding is always valuable, but I don't think you're going to have to use them explicitly. I don't think you're going to consciously have to sit there and go, "Oh, here I go choose a linked list for this algorithm," because I think you'll just be able to say, "Hey I need an algorithm that does this. Point it to some other code that you have and I need to interface it with that. Go do it." Right? Like I see that being a lot more the direction versus like completely replacing software engineers, but um 10 years is a long time. 10 years is a long time, so it's hard to say. But that's my kind of prediction, at least for the next few years. Maybe we'll do another AMA with this exact same question in a couple of years, and we'll see how off I was. I'm gonna log off in here just a moment, so I'm gonna take this one last question. And again, thank you because these are really good questions. But we'll end with this one. Why is monoliths still more common over modular monoliths for medium to large apps? What are the challenges in adopting a modular monolith strategy? Can you some recommending good learning resources? Yeah. On resources, I'm going to give a shout out to. And sorry, by the way, I don't know necessarily where you're coming from. I know obviously you're on YouTube putting this in the chat, but if you follow me on LinkedIn or these people are also on YouTube making videos like um, uh, Milan, who makes C sharp videos, like He's awesome. And my goodness, this is the thing with doing it live. It's like I know I can picture their faces and stuff, but I'm like I can't think of their names. Code Opinion, Derek Co Martin. Derek has an extremely good way of explaining things where like you if you wanted to debate Derek, I feel like he can debate any side of it and win because it's not about like being absolutely right or absolutely wrong. I think Derek does, and it's from Code Opinion. Derek does such a good job of giving you context. So in this particular situation, if you have X, Y, and Z, yes, this will probably be better, right? If you have these conditions. If not, maybe this way, and here's why. He just does such a good job of explaining that. So I would say Milan, who you probably know if you're watching my videos on C sharp stuff, you probably watch Milan. He posts a lot on Twitter, LinkedIn. Derek does as well on all those platforms. They have great YouTube videos though, so definitely check them out. There's others. I'm so sorry. It's just like I'm on the spot being like, I don't know like what's going through my head. Those two come to mind right now. Um, why is a monolith still more common? So the way that I look at a monolith and a modular monolith, and people watching this, like depending on how pedantic you want to get about it, I think like a modular monolith is just a monolith. It's just that you've written the code in a modular way. And I think that by prioritizing having modular pieces just allows you to extract them easier. So I don't have stats about monoliths being more popular. I think there's probably just lots of monoliths that have been built, but I would say maybe a monolith is more popular or common than a modular monolith because people aren't maybe that awesome at making modular code, or having an idea how they want to break out modules from things. Like personally, if you watch my content or read my articles, I talk a ton about plugin architectures. So I'm extremely biased the other direction, and to an extreme, right? I know that I I overdo it, but I love writing stuff with plugins in it. But that forces me to like I need to write code that's modular, or else I can't make a plugin for it. So I force myself into that pattern. So I do think that maybe it's just a lack of of understanding how to write modular code. I think it's a different mindset perhaps, but I don't know the stats on it personally, so I can't tell you here's how it is because I don't know if that's necessarily a true statement. But challenges in adopting a modular monolith strategy. I kind of touched on that. I think it has to do with the fact that you need to start thinking about, at least this is how I do it. I start thinking about pieces of my system. Derek could do a much better job explaining this. I feel like an idiot about to open my mouth about this, but I think if you consider the potential domains that you have and how those might be possible to be pulled out into different services, right? Like I need a user management service. I need something that does payments. I need something that does notifications. Like to me, those are features, right? And you could have domains around those features. I might be using the wrong words here. Sorry, Derek, if you ever watch this, but I think that my head goes in that direction. They're features. I try to organize them that way. Maybe do some plugins, some vertical slices, but all of those things start to create like modularity. Then from there, it's like, cool, this thing's scaling up. Like the way that we're managing our users right now, we need to start having multiple instances of this because we need way more process. I'm just making this up. We need way more processing, so we have to scale this out horizontally, but we don't want the whole app, right? Or maybe in the beginning you don't care. Maybe you're like, we need more user management support. Cool, scale out the whole modular monolith. Like, who cares, right? You're still gonna get more, user service instances because of that. Um, I I think Derek made a video on this recently about like deployment patterns versus like how code is structured. Certainly like a decoupled deployment. Like I'm coming literally from a deployment team saying this. Deploying stuff all together with a lot of teams deploying really big software is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And the reason it's a nightmare is because when one thing is wrong and everyone's bundled together, What do? When everything's decoupled for deployment, at least, right, you have flexibility. It doesn't mean that it's easy. You at least have flexibility. When it's all tied together, not so flexible. Just super high level perspective on that. So, yeah, I think that some of the challenges are honestly just thinking through how you would take a code base and start untying code that's probably very coupled together. I think that's how I would start to approach it, is start pulling these pieces apart into logical groups, features. But I think, if you didn't have that in mind and you just started coding stuff, putting it all together and it's working, and then a year or two into it, you go, oh crap, like why does I don't know, like why does our notification system like have access to our payment database? Like I'm obviously making this up, but you might just have pieces that are so coupled together that you're like, oh crap, how do we back out of this, right? So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But great question, thank you. I hope that helped. That's just my perspective on it, but we'll wrap things up here, I think. Again, thank you so much for the questions in the chat. I am going to be trying to live stream. I want to try doing it once per week. To give you some context, I started taking content creation more seriously last year, and I said 3 long form videos a week and 1 blog article per week. I'm starting off the year. I got a couple weeks, couple months in. I couldn't even write a blog article per week with my videos. Like, could not do it. So it took a long time. I think it took me until August before I could start getting 1 article per week out with my 3 videos. Now I think I'm almost at 6 or 7 if you include the newsletter for articles and my 3 long form videos. I would like to supplement my videos with 1 live stream every week. But it means I have to start getting some time back somehow. So I want to try doing this. AMA I thought was really cool. I have plans for doing code reviews. I don't know if maybe I'll alternate between them or something like that, but I have some Discord members that were volunteering to say like, hey, like, yeah, I'll share some code with you. I told people, anyone that wants to, Jenkins. What's the Jenkins comment about? For code reviews, I was saying to people like, I'm not gonna, make fun of your code or anything like that. I want to make sure that like I'm reviewing your code the way that I would review anyone's code, right? I want to give you like positive feedback, navigate through it, give you that experience, and not just be like, hey, look at this, how silly this person wrote their code. Oh, message deleted. Open source pet projects. Yeah, I gotta close off this live stream. I gotta get to bed. I do have a GitHub. There's tons of stuff on there. But I don't really have. I made a couple. I had there was a tech company a good friend of mine started in Kitchener Waterloo, where I spent a lot of my adult life before going to Microsoft. They made the Mayo. I'm not sure if people know what that is. It was like an armband that you could wear that picked up, it could sense like why can't I think, muscle activity, so you could move your hands, had gyroscope and everything. So I wrote a C# interface for that, which was really cool. That was open source. I'm not super active with open source, not because I don't believe in it, but I don't have time. I don't have time for all the stuff I want to do for myself. So it's really tricky, but yeah, do have GitHub. You can check out stuff there. But a lot of the videos I put out, I try to make sure the code that you're seeing in the video, I'm putting that onto GitHub. There's a dev leader repo that has a lot of that stuff too. And I try to, when I can, link it in my blog articles as well, just so people can reference it. But that stuff's not like open source projects. It's just code for examples. Cool. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I think Rohit, if you might have missed the beginning of this video, I did say that a lot of people reach out to me asking for jobs and stuff at Microsoft. I would suggest watching the beginning of this video, but this live stream, it will be recorded and posted. But yeah, unfortunately, the answer to that is you have to go through the careers page. I said it earlier in the video, so I'm not making it up. That's just the way to go forward. So Um, you'll see any careers posted there. All right, folks, thank you so much. This is really cool for me, so hope you got to learn something. And if you have other questions and stuff that you want answered in the future for these, find me on social media, shoot me a message. You can check out the Discord. That is a paid membership. There's a public channel, but it's rate limited, and I don't have time to respond to people there because that's why I made a paid community for it. But you can reach out to me on social media too. Leave comments on videos and just say, "Hey, for your next AMA, can you talk about this?" Happy to just make a list and get it done. So thank you so much. Yeah, this was fun. We will see you hopefully next week. I can do this again, and we'll see how things go.